Rev up your engines!
Today I'm going to talk about why a 2002 Camry may be one of the best made cars ever. Alright, here's a 2002 Camry with a 4-cylinder engine. Paint's still really shiny. Yeah, the headlights faded a little, but you can polish those if you want. It's still a sharp looking car, all these years later. Gigantic trunk, goes on forever. Whoa. And yeah, the key fob unlock for the trunk doesn't work anymore, but you can't have everything. I'm not going to poo-poo an 18-year-old car for that. Still has the original Camry mag wheels. Hey, these are great alloy wheels. They're fantastic. They still look great 18 years later. Let's check the inside. Utilitarian, fabric seats, they're comfy. Plenty of room for the baby seats in the back. Let's see how many miles it's got on it. It's got 129,000 miles, so it's barely broken in. Let's check it out. The AC still blows nice and cold. Let's check under the hood. Look, the hood strut still works. Don't need a stick. Even that was well made. Now, it's not a race car. It puts out 157 horsepower, but it's plenty for moving this car around. And on this old 2002, the 4-speed automatic is pretty much indestructible. I've seen them with 500,000 miles on them and they're still going. I'm sure it's not going to win any drag races, but with this engine and that tranny, this one gets about 24 miles a gallon in the city, but it gets 33 on the highway. Good gas mileage for a car this size that's this old. And this old 2002 4-cylinder engine, it's high tech. It's got the variable valve timing eye system in it, but it didn't have the oil burning problem that some of the later 2007s had with the engines that were made in the United States. This baby was made in Japan. For some reason you don't believe me, here's the sticker. And what does it say? Made in Japan. Now sure, the beauty cover is all cracked and coming apart. Doesn't serve any purpose anyway. And as I said, the headlights are fogging up. They're all plastic, but you can polish that off or just replace it with an aftermarket unit. But this one still has the original engine, the original transmission, the original radiator. They built these things solid in Japan in 2002. They still even sound solid. Listen to this when we close the hood. Nice solid sound, isn't one of those little clunky tin things. Open up the back door. They got plenty of room inside. In this case, it's set up for a couple of kids' seats. It even has cool cup holders. Armrest. Big deal back in 2002. And also, heating air conditioning vents coming in the back to make the back comfortable. We'll take it for a ride, see how it goes. This is the XLE, so it's even got some of the wood grain on it here and there. Let's see if it starts. Starts right up like Toyotas always do. Well, see how it accelerates. Let's check it out. It's got a little bit of zip to it. Shifts like a dream. Now, of course, as old as it is, when you hit bumps, it bounces around a little, you know. There's no way a car this old with this many miles is going to bounce some when you hit bumps. Kind of floats a little. You could put new struts on it and it would ride quite a bit better. But this is a work car now. It's still plenty safe enough, taking turns and driving. It tracks straight. When I let go of the steering wheel, it goes straight. You just live with things like worn struts unless you want to spend a lot of money to put good ones on. It's perfectly safe the way it is. As you can hear or not hear, it's still a pretty quiet car. That's what these things were made for. Really, as far as I'm concerned, it's one of the most perfectly made 4-door sedans of all time. They last and last and last, but they still are decent for riding around it. If you wanted to make it top notch on this, yeah, you'd have to put front and rear struts, spend a reasonable amount of money doing it, but since this is now relegated to being a work car, and his wife has the fancy car, he's not gonna waste any money on that, and I agree. It doesn't bottom out when you hit bumps, and when you're on a highway, it doesn't go straight, and then when you hit bumps, it doesn't wobble all over, and then when the bumps are gone straightened out, it rides perfectly fine on a highway. It's just not gonna absorb the bumps like it originally did. And for a car of this size that rides like it does, 34 miles a gallon on a highway back in 2002 was decent. It's even decent today when you think about it, because this thing doesn't have GDI, turbocharger, 8 or 10-speed automatic transmissions that are very complex, that have had problems. It's a simple tried and true 4-cylinder engine made it to a very reliable 4-speed automatic transmission that Toyota made for a long time. Me, I'll take long-term reliability any day over 2 or 3 or 4 or more miles per gallon gas mileage. Because in the long run, if something can last hundreds and hundreds of thousands of miles, the little bit you saved on that gas money isn't going to mean squat if you got to put thousands into an engine or a transmission. These things are workhorses and they can run indefinitely as long as you don't overheat the engines. And even though it's a 2002, it still has a metal timing chain. It doesn't have a rubber belt that you got to worry about breaking and replacing it. This has a metal chain. Generally in these, change your oil regularly, it'll last just as long as the engine. And that can be 300,000-400,000 miles or even more. And being a Toyota Camry, they sold so many of them, parts are readily available and often very inexpensive. There is a humongous aftermarket for these cars for getting parts. You don't have to go to the dealer to buy a starter or anything like that. There's plenty of places that sell good parts for them. They are very, very inexpensive to maintain. When they do finally wear out, I mean, everything wears out eventually from friction. To give you an example, a couple weeks ago I did one where the CV axle, the rubber broke and the joint was worn. So I replaced the whole axle. I got a brand new one for 79 bucks. The same job on a Mini, you can spend 800 bucks or more doing that. These parts are readily available, quality, and they don't cost that much. I know a lot of people say, oh, I want a boring Camry, it's boring, it's boring. Well, if you want an exciting car, like a Fiat or a Jaguar that brakes all the time, you get the excitement of, oh no, what's wrong now? Now what do I have to pay for? Go ahead and buy one of those. But if you want something that keeps going and going, has a nice comfy ride, gets decent gas mileage, especially on a highway, you can't beat a 2002 Toyota Camry, especially with the 4-cylinder engine. Because for what they are, you really don't need a V6 engine. Yeah, it has more horsepower, of course, it's zippier to get around. V6, 3 on each side. They wear out faster, and they have a lot more moving parts that break. They're much more expensive to maintain, and being a more powerful engine, they have a tendency of wearing out the transmissions a lot faster than a 4-cylinder engine will. So now you know a bit more about a 2002 Toyota Camry, and why, hey, it might in fact be one of the best 4-door cars ever made. And here's some bonus questions and answers. Here's one for you. Sometimes bright is too bright. Ford is recalling 217,000 F-150s because their headlights are too bright. Yes, you're not imagining it when you see one of those Fords coming at you at night and it seems too bright, because some of them are. The 2018 to 2020 F-150s with the LED options have a problem where LEDs aren't dimming right. What happens is the daylight running lamps don't dim when you turn on the regular headlights, so you got too much brightness coming out. So they're gonna have to do a software update on it so that go dim when you turn on the regular lights. Yeah, these self-driving cars, right, they're gonna be here in the future, and I say what a joke that is. Look, if they can't even make cars with headlights that work correctly, there's not too much hope that they're gonna have self-driving cars anytime soon, as far as I'm concerned. So if you're driving down the road and you see a F-150 with the lights shining on too bright, 2019, 2020, the late model ones, now you know why. They have bad software and the things aren't dimming themselves when they're supposed to. Here we go with fuel cell cars. Turns out that scientists at the University of Aberdeen have discovered new compounds to revolutionize fuel cell technology. The problem is, between the cost and the weight and the heat, they're really expensive to make. Now, they're working on ceramic fuel cells. And the main problem with the ceramic fuel cells is they burn out faster because of the high temperatures they operate at. And the ceramic fuel cells can even use hydrocarbons. You can use methane and stuff to run them. A big deal because it could be a stepping stone that if we figure out how to make hydrogen cheap, we can use hydrogen, they won't pollute at all, but we can use methane now. The problem with using methane is it has a tendency of clogging up the cells. Now, the problem with these ceramic fuel cells is they operate at high temperatures. They operate at 800 degrees Celsius, which is over 1,400 degrees Fahrenheit, so that's hot. Now, the new one only operates at 500 degrees Celsius. Now, still, it's pretty hot. That's 932 degrees Fahrenheit. It's a lot hotter than your oven at home, that's for sure. It hasn't been put to test, actually used in any cars or anything like that, but it's an interesting breakthrough that they say they're working on to make these ceramic fuel cells so that not only do they work at a lower temperature, but that they can use stuff like methane. They can use hydrocarbons to run it and don't have to have just pure hydrogen, which is going to cost a reasonable amount of money to switch everything over to hydrogen, and the hydrogen has to be created too. So you never know what's going to happen in the future. But here's another possible scenario for fuel cells, which, as I said before, they beat batteries because the batteries have to be recharged and they weigh a lot. They take up a lot of weight and a lot of space, where the fuel cells are a lot lighter. Cody, Lisa, Scotty, what's the most reliable station wagon for $5,000 or less? It's a used car, so issues can happen, but for the most part, what's the most reliable? Well, the problem is hardly anybody makes station wagons anymore. When our kids were young, I got a used Camry station wagon. It was a great car. It was made in Kentucky, too. When I was a kid, we rode around in Ford station wagons. Everything's gone SUV. You're looking for an actual station wagon if you can find a good Toyota station wagon that's still in good shape from the past, or even that Honda Accord station wagon. That was pretty good. But of course, that was quite some time ago. Yeah, and they're hard to find. If you can find one, you know, BMW makes them and stuff, but they're not reliable at all when they get to be in that price range. So you're kind of looking for a needle in a haystack there. IMR 29098 says 2000 Monte Carlo, well, it's 3,400, 54,000 miles. So I have developed a coolant leak on the passenger side of the engine. Leaks around cylinder 1 on the firewall of the motor. There's lots of things that can leak. It's a 20-year-old Monte Carlo, but it's only got 54,000 miles. That's not much mileage. A lot of times, it'll be those stupid freeze plugs, and you're going to have to replace them, and that can be a pain in the butt. Let's say they just got little cracks on them or something. I've had very good luck using the Bars Alumaseal radiator sealer for that. You just add it to the coolant. It even says on it, can be mixed with any coolant. Let it sit for half an hour idling. Then let it sit overnight and then drive it. And if you find the leak stops, great. It can permanently fix small little cracks. Let's say your head gasket's starting to seep on that side. It's a big money job taking the engine apart. But if the coolant is leaking just on the outside of the engine, the sealers work excellent then. If it's internal, a lot of times they won't. But if you got it leaking externally, a lot of times the sealer will fix it permanently. I've fixed some of those things that way, and then 4 or 5 years later, the customers are still driving them, and I say, hey, did it ever come back? And I said, nah, the leak never came back. Anderson said, Scotty, I'd like to travel down south to Texas from Pennsylvania so I can buy a good used car at a great price. The market for used cars is horrible in both the price and quality in Pennsylvania. I got a friend that does it from Chicago, and he comes down here 4 or 5 times a year with a big old hauler. 6, 7, 8 cars, takes them back and doubles his money. He leaves the Texas plates on him to show people, look, it's from Texas, there's no rust on them. Not a bad idea if you know a little bit about cars, because you're going to have to check them out and make sure they're not a ripoff. But a lot of people do that nowadays. You might even try Florida. Florida's often a really good place because there's a lot of old people there. Eventually, they can't drive at all. They got to sell their cars. And since their relatives are up in New York or Minnesota or wherever, they don't want to come the whole way down to get an old car. You can get them pretty cheap down there. They don't rust in Florida either. You might try that.
So if you never want to miss another one of my new car repair videos, remember to ring that bell.